Want to introduce our next speaker now, Joe Mountfield, who's the RCOG Vice President for Workforce and Professionalism. And she's really going to give us a bit of an update and insight into the recent developments that they've been discussing at the RCOG regarding our training. So I'll pass it over to you, Joe. Thank you.
Right. Good morning, everybody. Can you see my screen? That's the first question.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Right, let's just get I'm going to talk to you about where we are with the subspecialty training review, which is clearly very relevant to gynae oncology as well as to everybody else. Oh, has it come up? Yes, it is. There we go. Is that okay? Is that everybody see that now and can hear me? Okay.
Yeah, yes, we can see and hear.
Perfect. I'll carry on then in that case. So, interestingly, these slides are slides that I did for a workshop a year ago now, actually. It was the first workshop we ran in Union Street in the new College Promise, and probably one of the first things I did as Vice President was to start off looking at the subspecialty training review, because it was on our to-do list in terms of having finished the review of the core curriculum. We needed to move on to review the advanced and subspecialty curricula, which had not been changed. They'd just been reformatted as we did the review. So these are slides from there, and that says a lot about what's happened in the last year, really. So you'll know this in terms of the number of units, but these are the 2019 figures, whereas these, in terms of the numbers of people who are completing in GEO, are the latest update that we've had from last year. And in terms of where people end up, well, we don't get a very good return rate, actually. So the 6 who completed last year, we've only heard from 2 as to where they've ended up, which does make it more of a challenge in terms of providing evidence when people ask us about whether people end up in subspecialty posts when they have finished their subspecialty training, although clearly the overwhelming majority of the ones that we hear from, that is the case. So why did we think that we needed to do a review? And this applies not just for GO, but for all subspecialty training. Well, clearly the new curriculum has provided a challenge in terms of providing evidence, and I know you've had Alec on the speaking already, and I'm sure you've had an interesting discussion about the need to provide evidence across the whole range of obstetrics and gynecology, because this is a combined CCT. One of the things that we do know is that around 25% of trainees need extra training time, actually, or get an adverse outcome, if you want to call an outcome to an adverse outcome, and that certainly is the perception. And so the question arises is to who are we getting, at what point are we getting people into the programme, but also why does there need to be such an extension for such a large proportion of people? And it is higher in subspecialty training than it is for standard training, although there is still about 18% of trainees within standard training actually have an outcome that's not an outcome 1 as well, and have some extra time or some targeted training time needed. So I think the challenges around this essentially are the GMC position, which actually means that we are still in the position of needing to have a combined CCT. There was a discussion at the time we were doing the core curriculum as to whether we should split the specialty, which would enable us not to have a combined CCT. But actually the feedback from the stakeholders at that time was really strongly that we should not go down a route of having one CCT in obstetrics and one CCT in gynecology, because that wasn't felt to be the right answer. So we are where we are with the core curriculum, and the fact that at the moment we are a combined specialty and we have a combined CCT. Some of the debates around where we should go are clearly run into the challenges of funding. Although some units have been really successful in getting funding for post-CCT posts, there are some anxieties about whether these posts would continue if we took everybody out of the training programme, and to make everybody who was in subspecialty training post-CCT, and does it make it a more vulnerable position? I think the other point that I feel really strongly about is that we are not very good at the workforce planning side of things. I actually, well, the demographics tells us, and I've seen the lovely data from HEE looking at the demographics of the population and what that means in terms of demands in particular areas, particularly gynae oncology. And actually, I suspect we're going to be needing to train more gynae oncologists in the not too distant future. But at the moment, we haven't got the evidence to support that. And I feel really strongly that we need to be doing a much better job of looking at the workforce and predicting where we're going to need more subspecialists and special interest gynecologists as well, and ensuring that actually we're matching the demand from the service with the capacity in training. And I don't think we've got that right as yet. And part of the issue around this is that there is a separation between actually what we need for the workforce and the RCOG approval process, which essentially just looks at the educational approval and doesn't actually take into account whether that post is needed in that particular area, or indeed whether we need more posts in that area, because there is a disconnect. Although for a post that's within training, you have to have an approval from your postgraduate dean. It may be that we have some posts that are, there's too many posts in one area and actually we need some more posts in other areas, but that comes back to the ability to train. But we haven't got that match up between the approval process and the college, which doesn't take into account the workforce, because that's purely looking at the educational activity. And I think that's something we've got to address as well. So at this workshop, these are the options that we discussed, and there was a representation from gynae oncology. In fact, some of you who are listening may have been there, and there was a representation from other of the subspecialties as well. And I'm not going to read all these out because you can all read basically, but essentially the options range from do nothing to take everybody out and make everybody make the training all post CT, actually move gynecological surgery, possibly geo and urogynae into the surgeons, send you off to the surgeons basically, rather than staying within obstetrics and gynecology. The dual accreditation was there, but actually in terms of the GMC, I think is not a feasible option. So we had a very good and positive discussion about this, and actually this was the option that came back as really the preferred option, and that went round to quite a large consultation as well, further than just the workshop. So option 3 with some modifications. So I say that because actually what the suggestion is that we need to try and push back, if we can, the entry into subspecialty GO training into towards the end of ST6 and into ST7. As you will know, at the moment you can't go into subspec training as late as ST7 because you're not allowed to have out of program experience or training at that point. And that's something that we need to start thinking about and addressing as part of this look at when and where we should be doing the training. I think the issue for many is that starting the training with the appropriate skills is key, and what happens is that many trainees are not exposed to gynecological surgery in a way that means that they're well prepared to enter gynae oncology training straight away after ST5. So one of the things that was made really clear around this option was that actually we needed to be very clear about what the entry criteria were and what levels of skills were needed before somebody enters a program, in order to make sure that they can achieve all the outcomes of that program whilst they're there. Although one of the real issues and one of the major issues for the GMC is having research as part of the programme. They really, really do not think that it should be there, and I think if we want to be successful in proposing changes to this, we're going to have to take research out as an integral part of the programme and have it as an entry criteria. That's not to say that you shouldn't still be doing some research while you're doing your subspecialty program, but actually to have the outcomes, have it as an integrated program. I don't think the GMC will agree to that if we move forward and change things, and that's just my opinion about how we influence in this issue. What are the positives about remaining in the program? Well, it is with the protection and benefits that being in a training program brings. There's no issues around study leave funding. There is, if trainees run into trouble, there is more support if needed from the deanery. There's oversight of the quality of the post by the deanery and the GMC processes, which does not occur if you've got training outside of the training program. What's the negative? Well, it's the one that you've already been talking about. There may be others, but the big one is that it's a combined CCT, so you cannot just give up doing obstetrics in order to concentrate on gynae-oncology, you do have to have a combined CCT, and that's the big downside, and there's no way getting around that. So what are we proposing? And this is something that actually most of the profession don't know about yet in terms of the conversations that we've been having. So I'm telling you, this is what we're talking about. We haven't made the decisions yet. We haven't got the sign up for it, but I've certainly talked about it with a number of the subspecialists in the last month or so, and we've talked about it more widely. And this is going to be coming out to the society to consider to see whether you would support this as a way forward. So I'd be interested to hear your feedback today. So what we're thinking is that we actually need to have more of a progression from ATSMs into subspec training, and that actually you should start your should do a year of ATSM training, which is relevant to your specialty before you move into subspec training. We know already that the gynae ATSMs will need a big revision, and actually what we're thinking is that it would be really good to have 4 big gynae ATSMs that will need 12 to 18 months to complete, and that will be for people who are doing special interest as well, and for those that are interested to going into subspec training. Now, what we're currently thinking about is basically having the gynae ATSMs, the proposals being considered as part on the basis of the ATSM being surgical activity. And so you can see what we're proposing below in terms of what is the major surgical activity that you would undertake if you were as an ATSM to then move into to have achieved a reasonable amount of that ATSM and got a good amount of experience before you then would move into subspecialty training. Now, for gynae-oncology, there would be probably one or the other, in the sense that you could not probably start the laparoscopic one and the gynecological open surgery one, but it would mean by the time you start your subspecialty training that you actually have good experience in one. That's not to say you wouldn't get some in the other surgical procedures as well, but your focus of attention would be in one particular area. And then we'd have ASMs, which would be specialty modules, add-ons, so there would be one around gynae-oncology for those that are going to carry on with special interest. So there would be a major surgical ADSM, and then you'd have add-ons such as colposcopy, etc., that were smaller bits that would then add in to give somebody who wants to do special interest their relevant experience. But if you're aiming for subspecialty training, you can focus your ASMs on what you want to carry on doing, which in the case of most of you who are sitting here would have been gynae-oncology, if that makes sense. The beauty of this is it gives people much better experience and focused experience on the stuff that they need to achieve before they actually enter subspecialty training. And that's been the big ask from many of you who said we need to improve the training for gynae surgery in order before people start subspecialty training, to which I would absolutely concur. One of the arguments has been, let's put hysterectomy back into the curriculum, and then actually our problems will be solved because everybody will have to do that between ST3 and ST5, and actually then that will sort everything out. It won't, because actually there isn't enough there aren't enough people having that sort of surgery to give every trainee that sort of experience, and we need to be more focused so that we're producing trainees that actually are really good at doing the bits that they're interested in, as well as making sure that they complete the core curriculum, which does have things like competence in ectopic surgery, competence to be able to do laparoscopic surgery up to a certain level, etc. I want to talk very briefly about the GMC process. I'm just having a look at the time to see where we've got to. It's fine. This is a warning, really. It is really quite a complicated and challenging process. It took, I think, from start to finish, at least 2 to 3 years to get the core curriculum through, and it will take another couple of years, I'm sure, I'm afraid, to get these changes fully signed off, because that's just how long the process is. However, the first big step, and the thing that we will need support for, is actually we have to take this whole concept of the progression and the fact that we want to, in effect, for the group of subspecialties, extend training time, because that, in effect, is what we're going to be saying if you don't go into subspecialty training until ST7. We have to convince the UK Medical Education Review Group, who are the great and the good, who sit on the GMC, to say, yes, we are prepared for you to rewrite your curriculum to have this change in the progress from ATSMs to subspecialty, to extend the training time, essentially, for those who are within subspecialty training. they have to agree that this is the right way forward. So they need to sign up to the fact that it is sensible for us not to put people into subspecialty training at ST, at the end of ST5, and actually people should be able to enter it later in towards the end of ST6 when they've already got a good amount of surgical and relevant experience under their belt. And then this should reduce the amount of time that people need to stay. They should reduce the amount of time, the amount of trainees who do not make the training within the current timescales. We also need to get wider stakeholder inputs, and this will include women and it will include employers, all agreeing that they think this is the right thing to do, because you have to have signed up to say, we support this, we think it's the right way forward. So we have to convince people that this is the right way forward for subspecialty training. I actually think it is, but I think it's going to be a challenge. We obviously then have to, I say we in the royal we, somebody has to rewrite the curriculum and then we need to submit it for approval. It has to be outcome focused, as you already know, that's what the focus is at the moment. And I think the other bit just to mention again is I think we need to be thinking really carefully about dovetailing it into the workforce planning work, which Kevin is leading in Glasgow. I don't know if Kevin's on the meeting today, but you will all be aware that there is a big workforce survey going on at the moment that you're leading, which is fantastic. And we should be able to play that into our work with HEE to give us much more accurate information about the number of people that we need to have doing gynae oncology, both special interest, hopefully, and subspecialty training, if that makes sense. So what's my big anxiety about this? This is my big anxiety. It's the shape of training. The people who sit on the UK MERG, as it's called, the deans and others are very, very signed up to shape of training, which, as you know, wants to move many people away from subspecialty training and making us all more generic. And the real challenge we're going to have is to explain to people that it is worth for a small number of key individuals who are developing and running subspecialty programs, that they should have the extra time in training with the money that that will cost in order to ensure that we are providing the highest quality care for women. And that is the argument, but their counter argument will be this, which is we don't want to do that. We want to keep training as short as possible and put people out of training so that they're not saying that they should be incompetent, but not at the same level to specialty. And there will be an argument for them about this could all be done outside of training. It doesn't need to be done within. And so that is the challenge for what we are proposing. And that's why we need good sign up from the profession to say, is this the way you want to take things forward? And then we have to do the work to see if we convince the powers that be that this is the way forward for our profession. And I think it's worth saying that we're quite lucky actually to have subspecialty training. A lot of other specialties didn't manage to get that agreed when things changed a good number of years ago. So, for example, for the orthopaedic surgeons, they do their subspecialty type training post CCT. Because they never managed to get the GMC to agree on their various subspecialties in the way that we have. So we could just maintain the status quo if we need to, but clearly that doesn't resolve the issue about the people needing to extend their time. So I hope in the future, actually we could get things really well organised so that actually people would come into subspecialty training feeling really confident that they're making good progress. And it would also, I think, give people an opportunity to say, is this really what I want to do? They'll get more experience at a senior level to say, this is the specialty for me. And hopefully that would mean there'll be fewer people then dropping out of subspecialty training. Not that there are huge numbers, but they're making the right decisions. And it gives them an opportunity to try this out and to see whether they've actually got the aptitude to do the subspecialty as well by doing the ATSMs first. I think the biggest constraint, and one of the reasons why we will need to fight really hard, is around the funding. COVID already means that a lot of people are not going to exit the training programme when they should be, and that is going to cost HEE quite a lot of money. There isn't a lot of money around, and certainly HEE at the moment say they have no appetite to put more trainees into obstetrics and gynecology, although it is one of our missions to try and persuade them that that is not right and we need to change that, basically. So the future could potentially look bright, but I think we have got some challenges along the way. So what I've given you is a really brief overview of what our thinking is in terms of where we want to go with subspecialty training, what some of the challenges are, and I am really happy to answer any questions, and I would really welcome some feedback as to whether you think this is a sensible way forward or not, because clearly if everybody says no, this isn't a sensible way forward, there is no point of putting in a huge amount of work to go down this route if then everybody says no, thanks very much, we don't want that at all, just leave us where we are. So that's it, over to you. I'm, as I say, really happy to answer some questions now if that'd be helpful. Now I've got to get out of the screen, haven't I?
Thank you, Jo. We've been monitoring the questions through your talk, and as always, with this type of topic, has generated a certain amount of interest. One thing that seems to be coming through is that the proposed strategy that you've talked about seems to be loading the training into the last part of people's progression through to ST1 to 7. And I guess that reflects the mechanisms that the college has for structuring training, which are the core curriculum and the ATSMs. There does seem to be significant appetite for acquiring these skills where it is possible earlier in training, i.e. ST5 and before. And it would be good if the college was able to provide a mechanism to do this.
Okay, so if somebody can tell me the answer to the question about how they think they would like that to work, I'd be really happy to work on it. But the bottom line is everybody just keeps saying we need to make let trainees do more operating at ST2 to 3 to 5. And my answer back is, but we don't do a lot of open operating at that anyway. And actually, we don't have the opportunities for trainees to go and do that sort of work. And if we have a situation where every trainee has to do a certain amount of things within ST, what we will do is just be stopping people making progress. That is the problem. And so nobody can come, if anybody's got a brilliant answer to it, I'm really happy to hear it, but so far nobody yet has come to tell me what the answer is in terms of gynecological training. I think there is some stuff about simulation that possibly we've not gone as far as we should do with that, and that's something I think we need to focus on. But I don't think the college has got I haven't got the answer. If somebody can come tell me what the answer is, we'll be more than happy to implement it. But nobody actually can tell me what the answer to the question is. So if somebody can, I'm really happy to hear it. I'm trying to get myself back so I can see people rather than my screen.
We can all see you.
Okay, no, that's fine then.
I think what people are suggesting is that there's some sort of non-mandatory part of the curriculum, so equivalent of sort of ATSM. I guess the analogy for this is for maternal and fetal medicine, where there's the module for fetal anatomy scanning, which people can do prior to getting to the end of ST5, and then gives them a base level of skill with which to enter subspecialty training for fetal and maternal medicine. So the solution, I guess, if there is one, would be some form of voluntary modules to complete prior to ST6 for those that are able to do it. I guess for those that can't, we'd have to wait until ST6 to get their skills in the advanced setting.
I hear what you're saying, but do you think that just writing a module makes any difference to actually whether you actually get the opportunity to go and do that or not? Because actually the actual sign off for that, so what we've got with fetal and maternal medicine is that they don't want you in the training program until you've learned how to scan, but scanning is a generic activity, and in fact gynae scanning also sits within the core curriculum as well. So I'm not sure that I just don't know that having a separate module for gynae operating or whatever it might be that you could complete if you wanted to as an added extra will solve the problem. Is Alec still around? Because I'd be interested to hear what his thoughts are about that. Alec McEwen, are you still on the call, Alec? Or
yeah, I'm here. I mean, I agree with you, Jo, and I've just actually put in the chat, although I think it's only gone to the organisers. The fetal anomaly scan module has actually gone now. So the only expectation when you're starting subspec training in fetal medicine is that you have shown competency at being able to do that kind of 20-week anomaly scan. So there isn't a module, although there is arguably still the requirement that you have a skill that the core trainee wouldn't normally have. But I think it still does just come down to what Jo is saying. There just are not enough opportunities for all our core trainees to access the kind of gynae surgery that they want to access. And so it has inevitably just ended up being the senior trainees who are actually getting to access those kinds of theatre lists. And certainly within my own trust, even prior to the pandemic, that was the case, that actually it was so difficult to get people through their ATSMs that all the opportunities that there were really being focused on the advanced trainees, leaving the poor ST 3 to 5s doing the day case lists and being lucky if they were scheduled into a main operating list where they actually got to do something a little more interesting. So I think it's the change in the way that we manage women and their gynecological problems, and the change in the way that we actually operate on them, that means that there's just too many trainees to teach.
Thank you. There are a couple of comments that have come in since we've been speaking, because it seems to have generated a bit of interest. With some people saying that it's hard enough for general trainees to do operative laparoscopy OSATs, and others suggesting more radical solutions. There's a comment here saying one answer is to adopt a urology type training with core training that then separates out into streams for those that are going to pursue office gynecology and those that pursue major surgery, which I then would imagine would lead on to the major surgical gynae ATSMs. So putting a mechanism in at sort of the ST2 level to stream trainees as analogous to the urology system.
So my response to that is, Jonathan, we talked about that at the workshop. So one of the options was to bring back the entry actually earlier, to give people the opportunity to say, right, I actually want to do that and I want to go in early. And we did debate that, and the feedback was, we don't want to do that because it makes people choose too early. And actually, so for some people who are absolutely focused, that might be the right thing to do, but for others, it isn't the right thing to do, and they need some time within the specialty to say, actually, yeah, this is definitely what I'm enjoying and this is what I want to do. So we did debate, and I hear that, but that would have to rewrite the core curriculum. That wouldn't go down well at the moment, quite honestly, having spent the last 3 years just writing it. And we're about to do the advanced curriculum, but you know, it's possible. But I think it's the issue of trying not to make people not decide too early about what they're going to end up doing, because you know, that has its pros and cons. It's good for some people, but it isn't good for other people.
And some other themes of questions coming in are really talking about the recruitment process for ATSMs, and whether or not there should be consideration of, in fact, some form of centralized or more standardized recruitment for ATSMs, as well as those same kind of questions coming in for sub-spec training, and also looking at the kind of scaffolding and support that goes around the ATSM trainees, in particular, who are undertaking that section of their ATSM, which perhaps is not happening at a subspecialty training center, and just actually trying to make sure that there's some standardization of the training that is in that region, because there clearly are some variations as well in ATSM training. Yeah,
I mean, the whole preceptor business around ATSM training and entry into it is actually quite variable across the country. I mean, I've chaired SEAC for a number of years now, and you know, Alec knows this as well, that different deaneries have different ways in which, so some have competitive entry into ATSMs and others don't. And some are very resistant to competitive entry into ATSMs because because each individual unit wants to keep their ATSMs because they don't want to lose that recognition. So it is a challenge. I would say it is a challenge around the ATSMs in particular, and standardising that. And it may be that once we get to the stage of having re-looked at the advanced curriculum, actually that's something that we need to think about. I don't know what you think about that, Alec, as well, with your curriculum hat on.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we faced it in the East Midlands last year. For the first time, we had more trainees wanting to do the gynae-onc ATSM than we actually felt we had training slots for in the region. And so that was the motivation for running a competitive entry. And actually, interestingly, the gynae oncologists were very keen on it because I think they felt that going forward, they would always like to do that, so that there were basically trainees that they could say, well, we have got a training slot, but we're not having you on it because we don't think you're up to it. And I have some quite significant concerns about that by the end of ST5, somebody can be making a judgment that a trainee really isn't appropriate for a certain ATSM. So the whole issue of competitive entry into ATSMs is a very difficult one. What I would say is that I will be very much encouraging an approach to the rewriting of the gynae advanced curriculum like we have done in obstetrics, so that the skills which are achieved during the ATSM that you are doing in gynecology will map directly into skills which are required in subspecialty training. And yes, they may be the more basic requirements that you find within subspec training, but they are the same. And so a trainee who has been signed off at whatever level in whatever procedure during their ATSM year ST6 will then find that when they enter the subspecialty training program, those competencies are already seen, signed and recognized. And of course, they are going to take them significantly further forward during subspec training, but the base level will have been done. And that will differ for different trainees. We're not saying that you are going to have to have completed the ATSM, but any skills that you have obtained and competencies during that ST6 year will then be directly valued in your subspecialty curriculum, which is what happens in the obstetric ATSMs and subspecialty training in fetal and maternal medicine.
Does that make sense to everybody? I hope it does. I think that's, personally, I think it's got to be the way forward. I think there are, I think the whole business about quality assuring what training happens within each hospital for each ATSM is a bit of a political hot potato, quite honestly, because I'm not sure that we've got the infrastructure, because who's going to make the decision that actually that person who's running that ATSM, you know, it's and it might be a round number of procedures, and there may be some future in that. But I think let's really tighten up on what we're trying to deliver within those ATSMs, because actually if we're saying that an ATSM is around pelvic, starts with a pelvic floor surgery, then actually if you're going to be the person that's delivering that, you need to be doing a lot of pelvic floor surgery, and you can't be a trainer for that unless you're doing a lot of it. And I think that might help us actually improve make sure that the people who are signed up to deliver that ATSM actually have the caseload and the capacity and the right skills themselves to be able to deliver it. I think that's the way to do this, rather than trying to do it from the sort of, we're going to go and visit you and tell you you can't do it anymore type scenario. That's what I think may be the best way to do it. That's what we're hoping for anyway. Have we got any feedback in there as to whether people think that's a good way forward or not? I can't see read the chat.
I think a lot of the feedback is reiterating I mean, as you would expect with a subspecialist audience, reiterating the sort of front loading of surgical skills rather than the back loading of surgical skills, with people deciding between a gynae surgical career combined with obstetrics, or a primarily obstetric career combined with emergency gynae earlier on in their training, compared to the late stage as it is currently. There are some comments here about people's use of UPI in order to be able to obtain the relevant surgical skills as well.
I'm on screen.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, I think what's going to happen actually is, because I think you're going to have to do your research before you hit subspecialty training. We will not get it through the GMC any other way, quite honestly. And actually, in order to do that, I think that what we will need to be promoting is more jobs where you go and do some research and you actually start doing some more of your gynae surgical skills as you're doing your research, basically. And that will be the way that people will actually achieve this, rather than trying to get everybody up to a minimum level at the end of ST5 and then put them in and say, right, you've got 3 years to get your research, get all your skills, and actually then we're not surprised when it's taking people a bit longer than that. So I think we've got to change the mindset that says, yes, okay, if you want to do it, you can, but actually you have to do it by a different route than the way that we're currently trying to encourage people to do it. And maybe that will help. But I don't think we can change the whole country to say, you know, we're going to make everybody choose at ST3 whether they're going to go down a gynae route and obstetric route. I just don't think that's going to be feasible, quite honestly. You're all a whole lot of highly motivated people on this call who probably knew what they were going to do. The whole world isn't like that, but that doesn't mean that some of those might have made really good success.
I guess there's some more comments about your last comment about UPI, which I guess is suggesting that out of programme is necessary for entry into subspecialty training, and really, I guess the people making the point that we should have a training programme that is equitable across the country and that works as a training programme without the need for out of programme, because as I'm sure you are aware, Joe, there is very variable access to out of programme according to what deanery you're in. So relying on that as a mechanism to get the skills.
Yep, and I would agree with you, but I would say to you this: you have to stop asking for the research then, because actually, if you ask me personally, I would say, do I need every single one of you to have published 2 papers? Now, some of you are doing huge amounts of research and based in that focused area. Fantastic. But I know a fair number of subspecialists who, once they become consultants, their publication output goes right down. And I would challenge the assumption that you have to be a prolific producer of academic literature as well as being able to get those skills. If I want a gynae oncologist, I want the person who can actually do that operation really well and look after me well. I don't care if they've published 20 papers. I honestly don't. I care that they know what the papers say and they use that in their practice. And that may be controversial, but that's what I think, basically. And so that's what the GMC thinks as well. So we will not get to the situation of saying we have to keep the research in there. I think we need to take it out, and I think we need to give people the opportunities to do it within programme. And one of the ways of doing this is by doing the ATSM first. That's what I think. Always.
You'd have joined us.
Yeah,
so we take a point from you, and then we're thinking about wrapping up for lunch. Otherwise, this will go on.
One response to Joe, which is that gynae oncology is not purely a surgical specialty. Our specialty is advancing every day, every second. It is imperative, if we are not to become technicians in gynae oncology, that we engage academically and scientifically with the trials, with the diagnostics, with the targeted medicine, and all of this comes from having research exposure. It is not possible to have a surgical specialty like gynae oncology based on gynae oncology clinical surgical training alone, because these guys will be out of a job in 5 years' time if they're not understanding the molecular basis of what is happening. So you cannot divorce.
I agree with you. All I'm saying, I agree with you. I'm not saying you don't need to know about it, that you don't need to engage it with, but I just don't think every single person needs to do it within their gynae oncology training. So what am I saying about UPI? Yeah, I think if you really want to do this, you are going to go out of programme and learn how to do this properly, doing your research and getting your papers. That's what I think. So I think you have to take it seriously and not do a bit of a, I'm going to be really controversial, you know me, I often am. You're not going to do a Mickey Mouse, just going to produce 2 papers so that I can tick the box to say I finished my subspecialty training. Actually, as gynae oncologist, and you two will want to do this, you want to get people doing really high quality research that produces and moves the specialty on. And I would absolutely support that. But I don't think the way to do that is by writing the fact that you have to have 2 published papers into your subspecialty training outcomes. That's what I think, if you ask me. But there you go. As I say, you know me, I'm always fairly blunt talking about this. Well, those of you that know me anyway. Some of you don't. But...
Joe, I'm going to stop things there because I know you've got to go to another meeting.
I have, yes, because I've got my medical staffing in my hospital, so definitely I need to go back and do that.
Thank you very much for that talk. I mean, it was fascinating, and I'm sure the discussion will go on, and no doubt it will. I'll draw things to a close there for lunch. Just to remind everybody, we're coming back 2 o'clock, so promptly come back for 2 o'clock